So my history with Samsung phones began in a stone age. Believe it or not, I still have my first Samsung flip phone till this day. No, it's not because I keep all of my devices, but because I wanted to share my passion for smartphones and where it really began. If we were talking about my first smartphone ever, we would be talking about the Nextel from Motorola back in the chirping days. My first phone with Samsung was the Samsung My Shop back in 2008. And it was on probably the worst carrier you could possibly get anything on, Metro PCS. No, it wasn't the best carrier for businessmen, but for high school kids, it was the best, especially when that high school student was paying the bill. Around this time was when the iPhone was just getting popular. As much as I wanted to get the iPhone, I pretty much settled for the next best thing, the iPod Touch. While my phone made calls, my trusty iPod played the tunes, and games, and the internet. I've been using this phone up until 2010 when I finally wanted a smartphone. I didn't even think that it was a smartphone, to be honest, but I actually got the Huawei Ascend that year, and I honestly felt it was a step backwards. It was one of the first Android handsets to hit Metro PCS, and it didn't work coming out of the box. It ran Android 2.1 and lagged like it was no other. I mean, lag was his middle name. The reason why it's not here till this day because I gave the phone away after I was just done with it. With just 50 contacts and a few terrible photos, the phone was the slowest thing ever. I mean, come on now. What phone do you know had to load contacts? After I downloaded about 300 songs on the phone, it would either crash or just keep loading. I was better off just using my iPod Touch. As bad as the service was, the only thing I really appreciated on Metro was the price, $35. After I got rid of the Huawei, I didn't really trust Android after that because of how bad my first experience was with it. First impressions is everything, and I didn't see any of that with my first Android device. However, I wasn't going to let that one experience stop me from using the operating system. I knew Android was still young and it had some growing to do, so I gave them the benefit of the doubt. Of course, I was prepared to get the iPhone, but with a Mac and an iPod Touch, I think it was time to experience something different. Most people would be scared to transition to something, other than the operating system that they were already using, but me, I like to experience opportunity, so that's why I bought the Samsung Infuse 4G. I got the Infuse 4G around May of 2011, or a month after it came out, because I could actually trust Samsung. Pretty much just like what someone with an iPhone would say, if you can trust a company the first time, chances are you will buy their next product. So you can say that the Infuse 4G was pretty much my official smartphone. I don't care too much about big screens because I could barely grip the thing. However, I got used to that over time. The phone was fast and speedy, just like any other smartphone. In fact, the phone was so fast I blazed through my data cap constantly. 2 gigs of data for me was kind of hard to maintain back then. I gotta say, after I started downloading a lot of stuff, I started to have flashbacks of the Huawei Ascend, and things started to get a little slow. Luckily, I bought a 16 gig memory card and put all of my files on that, which freed up a lot of space. Yes, it had the traditional Android lag going on, which was noticeable at times, but it wasn't terrible. To be honest, I really didn't see much of it. The phone marked my first smartphone with AT&T, and I was amazed. But do you know what was funny? A month later, the Galaxy S2 came out. In fact, it was called the Samsung Galaxy S2 Epic 4G Touch on Sprint. The rest of the carriers just called it the S2. I wanted the phone but couldn't get it because I was already on AT&T. Luckily, I purchased my phone and unlocked it so I wasn't on a contract, which carriers hate. I eventually got the Galaxy S2 6 months later on Sprint, and it was only because they offered me a much better deal than AT&T. Really, I think it was the biggest mistake of my life. The phone wasn't the mistake, but the carrier was definitely an issue. The customer service wasn't really the best on the market. When I bought my phone, it wasn't activated when I walked out the door. I ended up having to go back and had to wait another 3 days to get my phone just because it wasn't working. The Sprint consultant ended up giving me an HTC Evo as a loaner phone for 3 days, which I ended up wanting to keep. And I finally got my phone along with a charger, case, and overpriced screen protector because of, well, a customer complaint. But no 4G. I mean, there was literally no 4G. The Sprint guy told me that I was going to get 4G in a few months, but a year later passed and still got no 4G. The only time I got 4G was when I went to Ohio and was literally in one spot to enjoy it. As soon as I moved inside the house, the signal was gone. I was literally the guy that had to sit by the window just to get the service he was paying for. 2 years later, still no 4G. But I can say one thing, I had to go through 3 batteries. I mean, this thing ran through batteries like no other. But that was my fault for charging it to oblivion while using the device. Of course I had it. Even though the phone was great, it was only great when on Wi-Fi. And remember what I said about first impressions? Well, I didn't have any of that with Sprint. However, because Sprint was affordable at the time, I couldn't complain, even though the company sold me a carriage without a horse to pull it. 2 years later, after my contract was up, I bought the Galaxy Note 3, and it definitely wasn't on Sprint. I wanted to use my next phone to its full potential, so I got it on Verizon. It certainly isn't the cheapest carrier to be on, but their new plans are definitely enticing. Because my biggest complaint with my old phone was the carrier and not the device itself, I definitely think that the Galaxy Note 3 was worth the upgrade. And no, I will never be getting on a 2-year contract again, which is why I got on Verizon's Edge plan. I think upgrading every year to a new phone was meant for me. And if I want to change my phone within 30 days of using it, I definitely can, which is a great thing about the Edge plans. 7 years later, I can officially say that Samsung has come a long way. Sometimes their phones can look really good and sometimes they can look really bad, as you can see with the S5. But I don't buy my devices based off of how they look. I buy my devices based off of what they do, which is why I never really went for the iPhone. I already experienced Apple products, now I want to experience something different. I used the Galaxy Note 3 to its full potential. Making payments by just swiping the phone is pretty quick. Texting someone while watching a video is really useful, and checking emails on the Galaxy Gear really helps. Sure, the phone has plenty of gimmicks like swiping your hands above the screen and looking away from the video to pause it, but most of the time you can say hi Galaxy and forget about most of them. You will never use all of the Samsung features in a day, and I believe that's the beauty of Samsung devices. All of their features don't appeal to me, but they appeal to someone else. So the device is diverse and other people can use it. Instead of being locked in a closed ecosystem, it's open and full of potential. So that pretty much sums up my history with Samsung phones and why I still use them till this day. What will be my next phone of choice? Let's just say I want a device to be something on my wrist that doesn't need to be handicapped to a smartphone.